Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention some of my socials in the description of the video. If you want to support the channel, please check those out. If you want to support the channel in other ways, please consider just dropping a like or a nice comment somewhere on the video. It really helps the algorithm push our content out there to a broader audience. With that being said, hope you guys enjoy the episode. Hey, what's going on, guys? Rome Gaming here, back into the video. Today's episode, we're going to be covering Discipline Priest in the War Within and whether or not you should play it. This video is only going to cover Mythic Plus. This will not cover anything related to PvP or raiding. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some of the changes for Discipline Priest. So overall, with Discipline Priest and just really Priest in general, for some reason, didn't get a whole bunch of changes going into War Within. You can see here we did have a small stat change to Sanguine Teachings. We did have a slight buff to Power Word Life, small rework around our Void Tendrils, and then a small rework around our Power Word Shield and Luminous Barrier. I'd say one of the main changes is our Mind Games was actually moved to a PvP talent and has been replaced completely by Phantom Reach, which will increase the range of our spells, Cauterizing Shadows, which will do a heal after Purge Your Wicked expires. And then we also had a slight redesign of our Manipulation talent here. We will be taking less damage from targets affected by Purge the Wicked. So in terms of Mythic Plus content, I mean, a lot of these changes don't really affect us for Mythic Plus. We're not taking Cauterizing Shadows, we're not taking Phantom Reach, and we're also not taking Manipulation as of right now. I will say that Sanguine Teaching, I believe, is actually 4% leech at the moment in the beta. It's no longer 3%. But just kind of generally, these are kind of the general changes that you're going to be seeing in War Within. Now that's the class changes. Now for the disc specific changes, we did get a buff to our Rapture. So our Power Word Shields were buffed by 80% instead of the 40% value. And then Luminous Barrier absorb amount was also increased by 400%. From everything that I've heard so far on this talent, it's still pretty garbage for all types of content. And you'll be taking Power Word Barrier instead of Luminous Barrier. So hopefully you weren't expecting too much in this section of the video, because that is literally it as of right now. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about hero talents. So hero talents for Disc Priest have me completely torn at the moment. I see pros and cons to both, and I think that both trees could be very strong. So let's first just go over what tree each tree is, and then I'll kind of dive into why I think the Oracle could be stronger than Void Weaver, or Void Weaver could be stronger than Oracle. So Void Weaver is your kind of mix between a holy, sort of this holy form and the shadow form. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be opening these rifts, and these rifts are tied to your Mind Blast. So when you Mind Blast, a rift will go out very similar, like a kind of like a frozen orb. If you're familiar with Frost Mage, this instead is just like a shadow orb that kind of follows the target and it pulses damage. Now, at the end of that rift, right, when the rift closes, it collapses on itself and it will do a big burst of damage. And you can also increase the size of the void through your penance ability. Now, another cool thing about this tree is Void Blast. So when a rift goes out, your smite is turned into Void Blast. And it's like a shadow form of smite. Basically, it's going to do more damage, and it will also do much, much more healing through your atonement. And the reason for that is two things. Number one, Void Heart. So while our rift is active and we have this beefed up smite, our atonement healing is increased by 20%. And then we also have a Void Infusion. So atonement healing with Void Blast is 100% more effective. Now we do have a couple other little things kind of going on here. We do have Void Wraith, which will make our Mindbender even stronger. So this is actually pretty powerful. I called it pretty small, but this is a pretty significant talent. So in most cases right now, we're running this. The opposite is Depth of Shadows. Shadow Word Death has a high chance to summon a Shadow Fiend while damaging targets below 20% health. Not quite as strong right now. We have a couple nodes here for survivability. One will kind of siphon life from an ally. The other will just kind of absorb magic damage. We have a buff to our Power Word Shield by 20%. We have a mobility node here, so your Rift can slow enemies with this talent, or with Dark Energy, it can make you move faster while the rift is open. Then we have Devour Matter here, and your Shadow Word Death can actually consume absorb shields. And if you do consume that absorb shield, you will be getting a little beef to your damage and 1% mana. So I don't know if this is more of like a PvP talent, to be honest. I don't think we're going to be getting a ton of value from this, There are the little orbs that pop up that have an absorb shield. I think it's one of the affixes, and it will like grant you haste if you kill the orbs. It could be useful for that, but outside of that, I don't see it being super useful in like a Mythic Plus environment. And then I can't remember if we talked about this one in the middle, Void Empowerment, which will increase the duration on your atonements by 1 second. And then Darkening Horizon Void Blast increases the duration of your rift by 1 second, up to a maximum of 3. So that's Void Weaver. Let's quickly go and talk about Oracle really quick. So in Oracle, you're kind of rotating through these premonitions, and they're kind of on this charge-based system. And the way it works is you'll go from Insight to Piety to Solace. So Insight here at the top, going to reduce the cooldown of your next 3 spell casts by 7 seconds. So I like to pair this, you could pair this with something like a Power Word Shield and get instant cast Power Word Shields. That could be pretty strong. Or you could also pair it with your Power Word Radiance. Now, Power Word Radiance, of course, as we all know, is going to be very strong because that's going to give us more uptime on our Atonement. And right now, there are some issues with Disc Priest getting uptime on Atonement. So this is kind of where the Oracle tree has some power, is you can pretty much, and we'll talk about this a little bit more once we dive a little bit further into the talents, but you can pretty much keep Atonement up 24/7 if you are running the Oracle tree. So if you are pumping the CDR from Insight into your Radiance, you get more uptime on Atonement, a very good thing. That's why I really like this Oracle tree. Now, it goes even further than that, but we'll just stop there for now. Let's jump into Piety. So increases your healing done by 50% and causes 70% of your overhealing on players to be redistributed up to 4 nearby allies. So this kind of turns you into a beacon. And the way this works is all that overhealing that you're doing on yourself or on a specific target will then be redistributed to everybody else. So you can basically just spam heal yourself while this is up and radiate a bunch of healing on your entire group. And it's actually very strong. And you want to prioritize yourself because we have another talent down here called Prophet's Will. So your Flash Heal and Power Word Shield are 30% more effective when you cast on yourself. So you could just spam Flash Heals into yourself and radiate just an insane amount of healing onto your group. Now, that's how you would play it if you were a Holy Priest. But as a Disc Priest, we're not spamming Flash Heals very much, right? We're kind of more into our damage, our atonements. That's kind of where our healing comes from. So if you're playing as Disc, this just kind of turns more into a pat the stats more than anything else. I do not recommend spamming Flash Heal into yourself if you are playing Disc. So just to make that abundantly clear. So we do have Piety, and then the final one here, we have Solace. So your next single target healing spell will grant an Absorb Shield for 1.7 million damage, about 30% of your health, and it reduces the damage taken by 15% for 15 seconds. So great to throw on yourself or even the tank. Now, once you get to the end of this, we'll go down to our bottom node here, Clairvoyance. Grants Premonition of Insight, Piety, and Solace at 100% effectiveness. So this means all 3 of these will be active at the same time. So you'll go through the charges 1, 2, 3. Then you'll have a fourth ability called Clairvoyance, which will activate all 3 of these at once. So for us as Discipline, that means even more CDR onto our Power Word Radiance. So once again, we're getting another 7 seconds off that cooldown. Now, it goes even further. So if we go straight down, increases the duration of your Atonement by 3 seconds. So not only are we getting a ton of CDR on our Power Word Radiance, we're also getting an additional 3 seconds onto our Atonement through Preemptive Care. So we have that, so keep that in mind. You can also take Bright Pupil. This will reduce the cooldown on our Power Word Radiance by another 3 seconds. So again, more uptime on Power Word Radiance, more uptime on Atonement. So we go from this node, and we actually have 2 more nodes that are going to beef our Power Word Radiance even more. We have Waste No Time. So Premonition causes your next Power Word Radiance to be instant cast and costs 15% less mana. So that instant cast Power Word Radiance that I believe we're getting from like Season 3, 4 Dragonflight, we are getting it back, but it is tied to Premonition. Then coming down here to the bottom of the tree, Perfect Vision reduces the cooldown of Premonition by 15 seconds. Now we're on a 45-second recharge time instead of a 1 minute, which just means now we're getting even more insights. So all this CDR, right, is just being funneled into your powered radiance. And it's, you know, it's not super great to cast a lot because it does have the cast time, but it does help when you pair it with Waste No Time. You do get that instant cast feature that we're very familiar with. So all this CDR is just being funneled into this premonition spell. And the more that you can cast it, the more CDR you're going to get on Powered Radiance and the more uptime that you're going to get on your Atonement. And when everything comes together, you could pretty much have Atonement up constantly. When I was testing this myself, I was able to keep Atonement up through nothing but Powered Radiance for 3 minutes straight. And that's not counting Flash Heal or Powered Shield, anything like that. It is just from me casting Powered Radiance. And then one other thing that I do want to note is down here, kind of bottom middle of the tree, Premonition grants an additional charge. So this will allow us to take 2 charges of Premonition. So this is very nice because let's just say, for example, you're sitting on Piety and you have 2 charges sitting there. You can actually activate the ability back to back to get the shield from Solace, right? So if you're going to put a big shield on somebody and try to save them in a pinch, you can do that by activating both charges back to back. All right, I'm just going to talk about a couple more things here and then we'll be done with the Oracle tree. Then let's kind of compare. So we have preventative measures here. So this is going to beef up our Powered Shield. It's also going to beef up our Penance, Smite, and Holy Nova by 40%. Very strong. We have Assured Safety, which is pretty interesting. Powered Shield will put 4 stacks of permitting on our target. So it kind of incentivizes us to use Powered Shield through these two nodes here. In the middle, we also have Divine Feathers. Your Angelic Feathers increase the movement speed by additional 10%. The main part of this is when you put your feather on an ally, you will also get 100% of the effectiveness. Save the day. For 6 seconds after casting Leap of Faith, you may cast it a second time for free, ignoring its cooldown. We did not talk about Miraculous Recovery, reduce the cooldown of Power Word Life by 3 seconds, and it allows it to be usable on targets below 50% health. That's actually pretty dang strong. Prophet's Will, we already talked about to get a little bit more beef on our Power Word Shield and Heal. So we have 3 nodes here in a row beefing our Power Word Shield. So they really want us to use it. And then Desperate Measures, Desperate Prayer lasts an additional 10 seconds. And then Angelic Bulwark's absorption effects is increased by 15% of your max health. I think that's everything. And then we have Fate Bender here, increase the effects of our premonition by 40%. That is very strong as well. I'm not sure if we'll be running Perfect Vision or Fate Bender, to be honest, but Perfect Vision is pretty cool for getting more uptime on Atonement. So that's the Oracle tree. So there's pros and cons to both. The Oracle tree, the pro is you can have permanent Atonement. And that's something that we really want as a Disc Priest. We want to have as much Atonement as possible to kind of be able to just kind of go through our damage rotation and pump out healing. The problem with the Oracle tree is throughput. It doesn't keep up in damage and it doesn't keep up with burst healing like the Void Weaver tree does. So if you have those big packs that you're pulling, you know, like at the start of the dungeon where you guys are lusting it, you're pulling like 20, 25 mobs, Oracle does have a little bit of an issue keeping up with all that burst damage, and Void Weaver does a better job with its rifts going out. You know, you throw out a rift into an Atonement and it kind of does that pulsing damage. It does a ton of pulsing AoE healing, and really Oracle just can't compete with that. It's just too much damage, it's too much healing, and it's why most people right now are taking the Void Weaver tree, is just because Entropic Rift and the beefed up Void Blast with the increased healing from Atonement through Void Infusion is just so strong in those burst scenarios where you really need to pump the healing. Now, the downside of this tree is when your Atonement's gone, when your Powered Radiance goes on cooldown, your Atonement's gone. You don't have any way to keep it up outside of Flash Heals and Powered Shields. So sure, there's more damage, sure, there's more throughput, but at the same time, you have those sort of weird areas where you don't have Atonement up and you're very vulnerable, and it's kind of hard to keep your team topped off, especially those fights where there's a lot of attrition damage just kind of pulsing out every couple seconds. Void Weaver does kind of struggle keeping the group topped up in those cases. So overall, between the 2 trees, I think most people are leaning on Void Weaver more than Oracle at the moment. I think more people also want to play Void Weaver. It's new, it's unique, it's aesthetically really cool. It does more damage. It does more burst healing, but unfortunately, they got to get the Atonement issue figured out with Void Weaver, or I think people are just not going to play the spec quite as much. This is something that everybody was really looking forward to, and it's really unfortunate that we can't keep our atonement up with this spec or with this hero talent tree. So my opinion, Oracle's going to feel more like the traditional Disc Priest. Void Weaver is kind of the new thing, kind of more shadow formy, more burst damage, more burst healing, and then Oracle's going to be more of a sustained healing. Okay, now let's briefly talk about our tier set. So our 2 set is Atonement Healing is going to be increased by 5%. So very nice to have, of course. Atonement's going to be our main way we heal. So any bonus to Atonement that we can get is going to be good. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite as high of a value as I'd like to see. I wish this was somewhere closer to 10 to 15%, as our Atonement Healing does struggle a little bit like we were talking about in Oracle. I think this would kind of help us with some of that burst healing. But, this is what we got, so we're just going to have to work with it for now. Then in the 4 set, Smite and Penance increases the damage of your next Mind Blast by 25% or absorb amount of your next Power Word Shield by 50%, stacking up to 3 times. So you can actually track this as a buff, so whenever you go to a target and you start to smite, it will be in the top right-hand corner. It's called Darkness from Light. So overall, closing thoughts on Disc Priest. I think both trees are good in their own way. I think they're both good on the opposite spectrums of each other, and they both need to kind of come to the middle and meet almost. Oracles are going to be better for, in my opinion, like sustained healing over a prolonged period with not a ton of damage going out. And then Void Weaver is probably going to be stronger for that real burst heavy damage. Big pools where you're popping less. There's 25 mobs and you just need a lot of throughput. I think Void Weaver also does more damage than Oracle, and then Oracle is going to kind of feel more like, at least from an aesthetic standpoint, more like the traditional Disc Priest that we're kind of used to playing. But to be completely honest, I think they're both going to be feeling pretty similar to what we saw in Season 3 and 4 of Dragonflight. However, I do think that we're going to be leaning a little bit more on flash heals, especially if you're going Void Weaver, on flash heals and Power Word Shields to help spread our atonement. Our Power Word Shield actually feels pretty beefy at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be draining too much mana. So Power Word Shield, especially once you pair it with something like your Rapture, I mean, you have shields on targets that are like over 50% of their health pool. So that, from a shield perspective, I think it does feel pretty good at the moment. So yeah, both trees actually have the opposite problem of each other. Void Weaver needs more atonement. Oracle needs more throughput. So Oracle tree needs a little tuning, and I think Void Weaver needs a small rework to get increased atonement on it. Okay, that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I also have some socials in the description of the video. I have a new Patreon. I have a Discord as well, so if you want to help support the channel, you can check those out. If not, you can also just support the channel through a like or a comment. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll see you on the next one.